Simon Riley had always been the kind of man that made others nervous. With his towering frame and the black skull mask he wore and the heavy boots that seemed to echo like thunder down every hallway, he wasn't exactly someone who people dared to approach. His reputation was fierce as the look in his eye, sharp and calculating, like he was ready to tear anybody apart who so much as breathed wrong near him. But there was one exception. Well, you. The first time Simon saw you, he had been losing his mind. You had been curled up in the corner of a safe house common room, reading a battered paperback novel like there was not a raging war outside. There was something about the way you existed so quietly, so unbothered by the blood and the noise, that stuck to him like a burr he couldn't pick free. The team noticed it too. Soap teased him endlessly, dropping sly comments every time Simon lingered near you a little bit too long. With the way he softened just slightly when you smiled at him, he'd grunt and brush it off, but his ears, the only part of his face visible, betrayed him every time, burning up bright red at the tips. Simon wasn't used to being soft. He wasn't used to being seen past the mask, but you made it so easy. You never forced him to speak more than he wanted to, never pushed him for details he wasn't ready to share. You simply existed beside him, quiet and warm existence in the storm of his mind. Tonight was supposed to be just another mission, but suddenly a delay meant an unexpected evening off. You wasted no time dragging him towards your shared quarters, insisting that he, quote, relax for once. Simon allowed himself to be tugged along, the faintest hint of an amusement crinkling at the corner of his eyes. The door shut behind you, and you flopped back onto the bed dramatically, arms spread wide. Come on, big guy, sit with me, you said, voice light and teasing. Simon shook his head, the corner of his mouth twitching under his mask. You're pushy, he muttered, but his boots thudded against the floor as he kicked them off anyway, and made his way over. The bed dipped down under his weight, and you scooted closer without hesitation, tucking yourself under his arm like it was the most natural thing in the entire world. Simon stiffened instinctively, but your warmth bled through the layers of his gear, and slowly he relaxed. You're really not as scary as you pretend to be, you said, glancing up at him with a playful grin. Simon snorted. Tell that to the rookies. Saw one of the guys practically piss himself when I walked by this morning. You laughed, and the sound was bright and unbothered. Maybe they should see you like this, all snuggly and soft, you laughed. He growled low in his throat, a mock warning, but you only laughed harder. Emboldened as you reached up and tugged gently at the edge of his mask, but his hand shot up, catching yours in a firm but careful grip. You looked at him, really looked at him, and whispered, "Only if you want to." Simon stared at you for a long moment. Trust was something he gave out sparingly, if ever. But the way you looked at him, not with fear and not with expectation, but just a quiet understanding that his heart ached in a way that was almost unbearable. Slowly, he loosened his grip, letting your fingers slip free. His hand moved to his mask, hesitating only briefly before pulling it up just enough to reveal his mouth and jaw. He smiled sweetly. It knocked some air out of his lungs if he was honest. "Hi, handsome," you murmured. Simon huffed a breath that could almost be called a laugh, his face usually carved from stone. He softened around the edges a little bit as he leaned into you just a little bit more. For a while you sat like that, tangled. The silence was easy and comfortable. You traced out patterns over the scars of his knuckles, the roughness of his skin grounding you. "You're good with your hands," you said casually, pretending to study the calluses like you weren't teasing. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" he asked. Mm-hmm, you nodded. Bet you could knit a mean sweater if you tried. He barked a laugh at that. A honest one this time. Short and rough, but real. Don't know about sweaters, he rumbled. Might stab myself with the needles. You grinned up at him, proud of yourself for dragging a laugh out. I'll teach you. Don't worry. Simon shook his head fondly, reaching out to ruffle your hair in retaliation. You squeaked in process, trying to squirm away, but he simply wrapped an arm around you, trapping you against his side. Got you now, little pest, he said, voice low and affectionate. You beamed up at him, your heart so filled you thought it might burst. There was no one who got to see Simon Riley like this, unmasked and unguarded. I like you, he said softly, voice raw but sure. Simon stared at you, something honest flicking behind his eyes. Slowly he pressed his forehead to yours. I like you too, he murmured, so quiet for a second you thought you almost didn't hear it. But his hand splayed against your back, big enough to cover half of it, holding you like you were something precious. The outside world was brutal and cold, but here in this tiny room with creaky beds and peeling paint, Simon found himself kind of just hoping he hadn't dared for something that wasn't going to last. Home wasn't a place, it was a person. And for the first time in a while, Simon was feeling like he wasn't lost anymore. The next morning, Simon woke up to a strange sensation of being watched. He cracked an eye open and instantly, on alert, only to find you looming over him with your face near inches from his own. You grinned mischievously the moment he stirred. Morning, sunshine, he chirped, voice far too chipper for this early hour. Simon grunted, dragging the blanket over his face in a futile attempt to escape your chaos. But you were relentless. You grabbed the edge of the blanket and tugged, hard. Come on, scary man, you can't hide from me, your sing-song voice spoke. Simon held onto the blanket like it was a lifeline, grumbling incoherently. You tugged again, and with a final mock betrayal, Simon let go, letting you triumphantly yank it off him. You looked far too pleased with yourself, practically bouncing on the bed next to him. I made breakfast, he declared, proudly. Simon eyed you suspiciously. Define breakfast. You shrugged, feigning innocence. There may or may not be an instant with the toaster, but the cereal survived. Simon sighed heavily, but there was a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. You were like chaos wrapped in sunshine, and somehow he had gotten intact. Fuck, you're gonna be the death of me, he spoke. You leaned into his side, your head resting against his shoulder as he sat up. Yeah, but you'd die happy. Simon chuckled under his breath, wrapping an arm around you. He beamed, absolutely unbothered. Come on, you said, hopping off the bed, offering your hand. Join me for a gourmet cereal experience. Simon took your hand and let you tuck him to his feet. The kitchen was a disaster zone. A slightly burnt smell still lingered in the air, and there was an impressive amount of cereal on the counter and floor. Simon stirred the cartage and gave you a flat look. You shrugged again, completely unapologetic. I got excited. He snorted, shaking his head without a word. He grabbed a broom and started to clean up. You watched him for a moment, a slight grin on your lips. You know, you're kind of domestic. You know, for a big, scary soldier man sweeping up cereal. Simon paused mid-sweep and gave you a look that could have frozen hell itself. You just laughed, bouncing on your toes. Next thing you know, you'll be wearing an apron and breaking cookies. Keep talking, sweetheart, Simon drawled, voice low and warning. See what happens. All right, no apron. For now, you chuckled, holding up your hands. Breakfast, if it could be called that, was spent sitting on the couch sharing a giant bowl of cereal because the kitchen was still a war zone. You ended up half draped over his lap, chatting nonsense while he listened with, albeit quiet amusement. At some point, you would pull out your phone and start taking photos of the mess. Don't, Simon warned, voice sharp. He grinned wickedly. Too late. Simon lunged from the couch to your phone as you started to dart away. "Give it, you little shit," he growled, standing up slowly, the way a predator might before pouncing. You clutched the phone to your chest, eyes wide and innocent. "I now have evidence, blackmail material." "You're gonna regret that," he said, his voice trembling with promise. "I regret nothing," you cackled, dodging to run across the counter. But Simon knew this house better than you, and he cornered you near a wall, boxing you in with his large frame. He backed up until your shoulders hit the wall, holding the phone behind your back defensively. "Nowhere to run now," you chuckled. What was going to happen next, you wonder?